requirements of the law on the SIM card registration. Um, we have noticed in the past few days there was a surge in the registration. Uh, Earlier, for several months, actually, we were only registering about 100,000 SIM card registrants. But in the last 2 weeks, we were averaging more than a million SIM card registration per day. So that just goes to show that the issue is not really limited ID or anything. It's just our bad habit of delaying for to the last minute, no, the compliance to the law. So this is the last chance. The law actually has our hands tied. We're only allowed to do this extension once, and um, up to up to a certain period of time. Thereafter, it will be a hard deadline, and those who do not register will lose all services. They will lose the number. They will lose access to their SIM card, which means they cannot call out, they cannot receive calls, they cannot text, and they will lose access also to their e-wallets and whatever financial services that are linked to their SIM cards. So I urge the public really to register quickly. We are exploring some options that will be available to us in order to incentivize our public to register. We did not put those conditions in the first SIM card registration, but because of our observation that people are not taking our deadlines seriously, we are now exploring other options to incentivize registration. So one is that we're talking to our telcos. During the 90-day period, we will observe the rate of registration, and after a certain period of time, we're seeing maybe 30 days or 60 days into registration, we will start deactivating some services on the SIM card. So for those who are registered within the first 30 or 60 days, we're still deciding on the date. But let's say after the 60 days, you will lose your access to your Facebook accounts or to your TikTok accounts. But you still can use your phone, you can still call, you can still text, and then after a certain period, you will lose your outgoing calls. So that way, ramdam nyo kung anong effect na hindi kayo nagpaparehistro. And so eventually, once we reach the 90-day period, you will lose completely all services to all your SIM card. So those are still being threshed out by the telcos as to which ones will be easier for them to implement, and how do we schedule the gradual reduction of the services. So yung mga matitigas ang ulo, they wanted some convincing whether we're serious or not. Makakatikim sila ng itong mga incentives namin in order to let yes, minsan siguro, that's the only language, that some of our countrymen can understand. So, so with that, kinausap namin yung telcos, baka kung pwedeng kung mga registration, dagdagan ng load or something. Malulugi daw sila doon. So kawawa naman sila. So we're exploring the possibility of gradually doing this. That way, it will definitely make the public feel that we're serious with the deactivation without completely cutting them off the services. But after the 90 days, that's when they will feel the full cut off of all services. So with that, I'd like also to remind everybody to be very alert on all the scams, text scams that are going around. We've noticed that before the announcement of the SIM card registration, I'm averaging about 6 or 7 text scams a day. But after we announced the SIM card registration, it was down to about just 1 or 2 text scams per day. But recently, uh, because of the nearness to the registration, and apparently many of the scammers saw an opportunity now because people are rushing to register. They're now increasing again. There's text scams by posing as your bank, and telling them they're so and so bank, and that you need, because of the SIM card registration, you need to update your SIM numbers, and that you need to register with them again and provide them with all those details. Those did not come from your banks. Those did not come from your banks. So do not be fooled by those. That's another opportunity that they saw in creating this social engineering, no, to deceive the public. Unfortunately, with this announcement of a 90-day extension, we expect that text scams will going to increase again, because we've now given them a 90-day window to continue their nefarious activities. So it was a pro and con thing, and it was difficult for us to make this decision. But we want the public to avail really of the SIM card registration. Ultimately, it is really for our own good and to protect the public from all these criminal activities and all these scams that are going about. So I'm just issuing this warning to the public. Expect an increase in the scams within this 90-day period, because we've just opened the floodgates again to them to use the text messaging, because these are all non-registered, no, non-registered SIMs. So with that, I think we're okay.
We have some time for some questions.
Yes,
Yeah?
yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay. Chona, you, Radio Inquirer.
Sir, good afternoon. How are you going to address the problem na marami po ang gusto magparehistro pero down ang system, hindi nila nakakapasok sa sistema ng mga telcos?
I think hindi naman down nung past 6 months, no. There may be down maybe a day or two, but it's not consistently down. So kung nag-down nung time na yon, then try again. There will definitely more times that it will be up. And in-address na yan ng mga telcos. A lot of the telcos have increased their capacity, have increased the availability of their system. So I don't think that's an excuse for them na just because once or twice sila nag-try, down for the rest of the 178 days, hindi sila nag-register.
Okay. Kathy Valente, Manila Times.
Ay, good afternoon, sir. Sir, isa rin yung problema yung more than half daw po ng mga SIM card holders ay walang government-issued ID. Will the government daw honor the other IDs? Kasi may mga instances daw, sir, na isang SIM card holder na may valid ID, kaya niya mag-register ng more than 10 persons, other people, SIM card ng other people. What are the measures in place po para ma-avoid yung ganitong abuse? And paano po pala natin matutulungan yung mga nasa malayong lugar? Meron ba tayong mga places where they can register in person or mga booths po? Thank you.
Opo. Number one, on the ID, actually our system is allowing even barangay-issued IDs. So barangay is already the lowest government agency, no, or government entity, and they're fully accessible by all the residents within that barangay. So a barangay issued ID is a government ID, and they can just go to the barangay to do it. In many of the barangays, once you go there to apply for a barangay ID, you can also use their facility. The barangay captain or the barangay officials can register for you on your behalf using your mobile phone and accessing their data or accessing their Wi-Fi or internet service there. So that's how liberal the ID system. It doesn't have to be a driver's license or a passport. A barangay ID would suffice. Second is our telcos, including the NTC and the national um, um, the national ID system, the PSA, actually has been deploying their mobile units, no, to many of the remote areas and informing those remote areas through their barangays as to what date and time and period they will be in those areas, so that the residents of those barangays can go to them. They set it up in the barangay hall so that they can do the registration. And these telcos actually bring their equipment and bring all the systems with them to do the registration. In our report to the president, we have identified some of the areas, some of the provinces that have low turnout of registrants. So in the next 90 days, we will be concentrating on some of those islands and some of those communities where we will be deploying more people and more resources to those islands for the registration.
So since we are live on television and in social media, I will repeat it in Tagalog. Pwede ang barangay ID para magparehistro ng SIM card. So magpatulong sa mga barangay natin. At sa mga wala pang national ID, hindi naman ito yung only requirement para sa registration. Pwede ang barangay ID. Okay, next we have Pia Gutierrez, ABS-CBN.
Hi, sir. Sir, ano po yung mga naging consideration ni President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in approving the recommendation? And at the same time, sir, what were the reasons of the DICT to recommend the extension, considering a few days ago sabi niyo wala ng extension despite the request of the telcos?
Yes, actually, it had a very positive effect by not announcing any extension. Nagkaroon tayo ng malaking registration in the past 2 weeks. Siguro kung nag-announce tayo ng extension na napakaaga, hindi tayo abot ng quota natin. No? We were just hitting 100,000 to 200,000 per day. But the last 2 weeks, because we did not really decide on doing that extension, we were hitting 1 million registrants per day. So clearly, matitigas lang talagang ulo ng ating mga kababayan. They always just want the last minute, and they're always hoping and for an extension. So kaya medyo we have to adopt a very a rather more stronger stance against this, continuing to provide extensions. In fact, our Bureau of Internal Revenue also has the same problems, especially for registration. Our COMELEC also always have the same problem, no, with registration of new voters. They provide a deadline, and on the last day, dudumugin ng mga tao yung ano. So it's a bad habit, and I think we should start being more responsible in complying. When we say a deadline, it's really a deadline. Thank you.
Tama ba, sir, the low turnout was the main reason for the extension?
Actually, it's not the low turnout. We are already at 82 million. 82 million. And as I said earlier, the 168 million original number is not an accurate number in terms of legitimate SIM card users. The expected number would be about 100 million, more or less, maybe 110 million on the high side. So with that number, at 82 million, we are about 80%. We are about 80% registered. We did a comparative study. We did a comparative study in the other jurisdictions in other countries where they also had SIM card registration efforts. And based on those studies, the actual number is really about 70%. So when you're talking 70% of all SIM cards issued being legitimate SIM card users, Sa 168 million natin, mga nasa 100 to 110 million. So we are expecting about maybe about 20 million pa ang hindi nakapagrehistro. And because that's all still a significant number, 20 million. So the president has decided to allow the extension of 90 days. You know, if we continue at 1 million registrants per day, 90 days should be 90 million registration. But of course, that is being naive, and we expect that itong 90 days na ito, mukhang magda-drop yung mga registration for the next 30 days, no? Baka we might be back to 100,000 or even less for the first 30 days, and then it will start picking up again when the deadline starts coming in. That's why we are exploring with the telcos the possibility of incentivizing them by letting them taste what it would be like if certain services are no longer available to them if they do not register.
Sir, last na lang. Sir, why only 90 days? Why not 120 days, which is the maximum period allowed by law for the extension? And also, sir, ibig sabihin may possibility pa po ba for another extension if lower than expected yung registration after 90 days?
I don't think so. I think 90 days. We all had extensive deliberation on that, and we feel that 90 days is more than reasonable enough time for everybody to register. The remaining for 90 days, we're talking about 120 days. For the remaining 30 days, we are exploring other possibilities on what to do with that. We might allow that after the 90 days, all SIM cards will be deactivated, but perhaps they can do some catch-up registration even after their SIM cards have already been deactivated. So that might be one of the options, but that has not been decided. So for now, 90 days is the hard deadline, and whether you like it or not, we are going to deactivate all SIM cards after the 90-day period.
Okay. Nestor Corrales, Philippine Daily Inquirer.
Sir, you mentioned earlier that it was not the law turnout that prompted the president to allow the extensions. Were there other compelling considerations that allowed the president to allow these extensions, sir?
Well, for one is that when the statistics came in, when we're looking at the low turnout, we discovered that some of the low turnouts were in the island provinces like Dinagat, Siquijor, Camiguin Islands. So these are some of the island provinces that are Tawi-Tawi, so Basilan. So with these, when it was presented, the president noticed that we need to put in more effort to deploy teams to those island provinces in order to address the low turnout.
Okay. Job Manahan, ABS-CBN News Online.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, regarding dun sa incentive na tinatawag natin, na-mention nyo kanina baka mawalan sila ng access sa Facebook, sa TikTok. More information regarding this, siguro sir, kakausapin nyo rin po ba yung mga yung heads ng Facebook and TikTok dito? Kasi we're talking about social media sites and it's very important to many Filipinos.
Exactly. And so we don't need to talk to them because that's purely within the jurisdiction of the Philippines. So we're not shutting down Facebook or shutting down TikTok. We're just limiting the access to those value-added services. Now we call them the VAS. It doesn't even have to be them. They could. One option is they still have access to that, but they cannot, for instance, do outgoing calls anymore. So it's up to the telcos. So we'll be meeting with the telcos to find out which particular option would be the most feasible to do gradually over the time frame. I just mentioned those social media because that's the one that's going to probably convince will have the biggest impact in convincing our kababayans to do the registration. Kasi yun ang ramdam nila. Yun ang ramdam nila na hindi na sila makapag-post ng TikTok or whatever. So tinitingnan namin. So mag-uusap na muna kami dahil that will require amendment to the IRR. So we will be working on those options. Kasi sabi namin kung wala kaming gagawin at basta lang mag-extend ng 90 days, we'll still have the same problem. Mahina ang registration, and then on the 70th, 80th day, there'll be clamor again, magpa-extend and all of those things. But we feel that kung makatikim sila gradually na anong magiging effect kung hindi sila magrehistro, mapipilitan talaga silang magparehistro.
Sir, additional po. Sa IRR, sir, parang merong provision doon na pwedeng ma-reactivate yung mga SIM cards.
5 days.
Opo, as long as nasa loob siya ng 5-day period. Pero ano yung mga conditions para ma-reactivate yung mga SIM cards na ito? Like, hindi po kasi na-mention dun sa IRR kung ano yung mga compelling reasons para ma-reactivate sila.
Actually, they don't have to have any reasons. It is just an last chance opportunity. Now, putol na sila, wala na lang service, but they're still can register. So, dyan yung leeway, no? Yung sinasabi, ina-explain ko kanina kay Pia Gutierrez, that 90 days, but since we are all allowed up to 120 days, yung remaining 30 days, maaring dyan kami mag-adjust. Perhaps not 5 days, maybe 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever, or to allow them to apply for reactivation. But at this time, definitely putol na yung mga ano nila, mga SIM cards nila by 90 days.
Okay, Alan Francisco, PTV4.
Thank you, ma'am. Hi, sir. Hindi yata ito question, sir, kundi advice na lang sa ating mga kababayan. Especially po, ang concern kasi, sir, ng mga netizen, kapag halimbawang sabay-sabay daw sila nagpaparegister, mabagal daw. So what time, sir, ang ina-advise ninyong mas magandang mag-register for them?
Alam nyo po, 80 million na po nakapagrehistro dyan. So, I don't think nababara yung system for this remaining few na medyo holdover, so to speak. Kayang-kaya na po ng sistema ng lahat ng telcos to accommodate anytime, any day. So, ang ina-address na lang talaga natin is yung mga liblibang lugar na medyo nahirapan sila. So, doon kami magko-concentrate. Medyo nagulat lang kasi ako. May nagte-text pa sa akin, no, na mga kakilala ko kanina. Paano daw mag-register? Sabi ko, teka na muna. Mga abogado kayo at nandito kayo sa Metro Manila. Ngayon pa rin kayo magte-text kung paano mag-register noon. So yun, no? We've been doing a lot of public information, a lot of things, and then, you have lawyers who are in Metro Manila who's not even registering. So, sabi ko sa kanya, postpaid ka, di ba? Yes, postpaid. So, tingnan mo, may na-receive ka bang text sa telco mo na magpa-register? So, tinanap niya, ito, meron pala, no? So, anong sa type mo? Yes. O, sige, type mong yes. O, yun, registered ka na. Ganun kasimple. Pero nag-antay pa rin up to today. Ganun.
Okay, Eden Santos, Net 25.
Secretary, clarification lang po ha. After po ng 90 days, pero may mga bibili ng bagong SIM, yun po talagang i-register na yun. Pwede pa po yun.
Opo. After the 90 days, continue ho yung pagbebenta ng SIM cards. Indefinite to yun. 100 days, 200 days, how many years? Tuloy-tuloy yun. Kasi meron tayong mga travelers, mga visitors. Siyempre, pagdating nila dito, bibili sila ng SIM card. So, once na bumili ng SIM card, kahit na sino, pwedeng bumili. But then, yung binili mong SIM card, deactivated yan. Pagkarga niyo sa cellphone mo, magre-rehistro ka. Oras na magrehistro ka, then activated.
Thank you po kasi bibili ako ng SIM card eh.
Heidi Sampang, FEBC.
Good afternoon, Secretary. Meron po bang nalalabag na batas yung mga SIM card vendor na naniningil po, let's say, ng 20 pesos po, minimum charge, every time po na nag-a-assist po sila sa mga nagpaparegister po ng SIM? Particularly po dun sa mga hirap sa pagpaparegister, parang mga hindi po sila digital savvy, o kaya po mahina pong klase yung mga cellphone po nila. So, katwiran po ng mga vendor, data po nila yung ginagamit, kaya meron po silang charge. So, may nalalabag po ba sila na batas? At saka yung ganito po bang pamamaraan ay ini-encourage para po mag-increase po yung registration po natin?
Well, actually, it's a private transaction between the SIM card holder and the seller, no? Retailer ba ito? Mga retailer. Nasa palengke, nasa ano, oo. So, it's a private transaction between them. They're asking for assistance from an individual. And so, kung tutulungan ka at nagmagandang loob yung tao at tinulungan ka using their data for free, pasalamat ka. Pero some of them probably are not willing. Parang ano rin yan eh. Alam mo dati, ba, kung makikigamit ka ng telepono, hihingin ka ng 5 pesos, pwede mong gamitin yung telepono. Hindi naman siguro lumalabag sa batas na mag-charge sila ng konting fee dahil may gastos rin naman sila. Katulad no? Data nila ang ginagamit. So may gastos sa kanila yon. And I think 20 pesos is very, very reasonable. And for many na medyo digitally challenged, I think nakakatulong naman yon. Otherwise, magpatulong sila sa anak nila, sa pamangkin nila, sa mga apo nila. Marami naman siguro diyan, or kapitbahay man lang, no, na marunong. Doesn't have to be with the retail outlets. Pero sa tingin ko, dahil medyo nakasanayan sila, dahil doon rin sila bumibili ng load, so feeling nila na mas kabisado ng mga yan kung paano ang SIM card registration. But ginawa na ho natin pinakasimple na proseso upang ma-accommodate lahat ng mga ating kababayan.
Okay. Any more questions for Secretary Uy? Happy birthday, Ana. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you very much, Secretary Ivan Uy. And again, a reminder to all our kababayans, magparehistro na ng SIM dahil 90 days na lang ang natitira. Ito ay libre. And as Secretary Uy said, may posibilidad na ang certain services ay isususpend, pero ito ay i-discuss pa. And we will be updating you on that. So in the meantime, please register your SIM cards. Thank you very much, Malacañang Press Corps, and thank you, Secretary Uy.
Salamat po. Salamat.